1st-round quarterback in this draft class.
I mean, listen to that praise. Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin, presented by Progressive Insurance. The NFL GM Mike Tannenbaum joining us for hour number one. We're talking football wall to wall here in hour number one to get it going. You heard Mel just effusively praise Kyle Pitts. Fellas, I got to tell you, the only person that has a higher opinion of Kyle Pitts is Kyle Pitts himself. You got to love the swagger, right? This is Pitts saying, if you pass me up, you're going to pass up a guy that eventually is going to turn out to be better than Gonzalez and Kelsey and Gronk and Ditka, you know, everyone that ever played tight end in the 101-year history of this great league.
I would say just it's going to come with consistency over the years. You know, once I enter the NFL, I want to start at a high level and keep increasing every year and being able to do other things that other tight ends aren't doing, you know, which will make me special. So I feel like at the end of the day, with all the preparation and just through the years, I feel like I'll, at the end, be the best to ever do it.
It's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. What do you make of that talk from Kyle Pitts?
I love it. I mean, I love the fact of the confidence and the swag that he has. He believes in his ability. And, you know, you mentioned some of the all-time greats at tight end, and you missed on a bunch of them, but there's a bunch of them that are all-time greats. And I think when you look at Kyle Pitts, he's certainly a unique talent, but you also got to factor some other things in there. Like, we are seeing, Mike, as you could tell, a receiving tight end. As you know, yes, there's a price to pay for a receiving tight end, but I also need you to be an inline blocker at times, and I don't know that Kyle Pitts in the National Football League going up and getting him in the 4, 5, 6 spot, whatever that may be, that you're going to be able to get those sort of things out of that position. I can't spend all of that draft capital and money on a glorified wide receiver that's big if, in fact, he can't do the little things. At tight end, you still have to do the little things. We show highlights of him catching the football in mismatches. But I also need him to block the defensive end. I also need him to block Von Miller. I also need him to pull on certain running plays and do certain things. Can he do those things at the National Football League level?
Yeah, Key, I think it's a great point, and I would use a little bit of a different word. I'm not saying it's the little things. I'm saying it's the predictable things. I spoke to a number of defensive coordinators, and then I spoke to a number of former head coaches from a defensive perspective. So guys like Eric Mangini, Wade Phillips, a whole bunch of guys to say, hey, what do you think of Kyle Pitts and how would you defend him? And to a man, they all said the same thing. He's an incredible offensive weapon. They would really count him more as a wide receiver. And what's interesting, not to get into too much of the weeds here, guys, but they wouldn't even really consider him a tight end from a personnel standpoint, meaning that if he was in line, as Key talked about, they would still play sub. They would be small and fast and quick. They're not going to put a big linebacker like a Bart Scott on Kyle Pitts. They're going to put a corner, a safety on him, and he'll still be a great player. He'll be a mismatch, but from an X and O standpoint, he's going to have to learn to block, and I think he makes a really important point here, Zubin, which is this. He's going to have to, on some 3rd and 1, make some meaningful play in the run game to really be thought of as a 3-down traditional tight end. Until then, they're going to just defend the pass against him. And again, he'll make great plays. He'll be a really good player. But to be truly this mismatch, the way a guy like Rob Gronkowski was for a decade, one of the things that Gronk can do is he could be on the strong side of a run play, and actually you could run behind him, and that made it a really difficult matchup for the defense.
And that's what you need. You need to be able to exchange, have a Kyle Pitts on the field, so now the defense and their personnel, they can make changes. But if you got a guy on the field like Kyle Pitts and you're in an inline situation, Zubin, it doesn't help you. You've got to be able to say to yourself as an offensive coordinator, it's 3rd down. We're leaving him on the field on 3rd and 1. We're not taking him off and bringing in Dan Campbell. We're gonna keep this guy here because he can do both things. Now the defense sits back and go, well, they can run here or they can pass here. Now all of a sudden you think about it. And I remember when I was playing, one of the great things is with our staff is they realized I could play inside in the slot. So they would move me inside on 3rd down. Now in the defense, they don't know what we getting ready to do because I'm big enough and strong enough to block a defender at a linebacker position, and I'm fast enough to get away from those guys. So it's kind of like, okay, what do we do? If we put in a nickel or dime situation, he's going to kill that little guy in the run game. And then if I decide that I want to put a linebacker or Bart Scott, walk him out, or whoever that is, now all of a sudden they're audible to a pass, we're screwed there too.
Mike,
and that's what he has to be able to do.
And Mike,
and Zubin, unfortunately, Key is 100% right. And everything he just said were things that I would pray every night that his agent didn't realize, because Key would have been even more valuable. And if he had heard what Dan Henning and Bill Parcells talked about, how great Key was, how tough he was, how we could run behind him, he would have been even more expensive. So everything Key said, I just hope Jerome Stanley wasn't listening.
Too late now.
last word for you, Mike. Bottom line is this. We all know Jason Witten, our old colleague here at ESPN, longest tenured player in Dallas Cowboys history. They obviously have been looking for his replacement for quite some time. Easier said than done. Cowboys are sitting in the 10 spot. The way people are talking about Pitts and the way Pitts is talking about himself as a generational talent, he probably ain't going to be there at 10. But the Cowboys have never afraid to be big and bold. How about the Cowboys moving up into the top 10 from 10 to somewhere else to try to grab Pitts and get their tight end of the future? Feasible?
Well, for me, I have three answers to that. No, 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 and no. And here's why. How many more times are we going to lose a game 49-47 if we're Dallas? Can we please win a game 14-10 or 10-7? We need help on defense desperately. I'm a huge Dan Quinn fan. I think he's going to be massively impactful. We have a really good outside corner in Trevon Diggs. We have a good slot corner in Jordan Lewis. We need another outside corner. Just draft Patrick Surtain. It's not that hard. They got tons of weapons on offense. If they can get some back of these offensive linemen healthy, that'll make a big difference. But no, 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 and no. We got to get off the field on third down. We got to play better red zone defense. We got to rush the passer. And I don't want to lose any more games if I'm Dallas 49-47. So I don't want Kyle Pitts. I want the best defensive player we can get.
Every year, the Dallas Cowboys dupe people, making them think they're moving up to get somebody.
Yeah.
They're not moving up to get Kyle Pitts, but Mike just said it right there, Zubin, that when you look at it, they got plenty of weapons. They don't need any more offense. They got to solidify the defensive side of the ball. And when you think about a Kyle Pitts, you draft him if you're the Dallas Cowboys. Let's say you take him at 10. He just falls in your lap at 10 and you take him. You've got to justify getting him the football. Yeah. Like, there's just all these other dudes that you paid. There's only one ball. It's not worth it if he's only touching the ball 3 times and 4 times a game. It's not worth it.
I just like how Mike had 3 words. No, 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 and no. Those are 4.
Yeah. Well, I lived in New York. I just try to get a word in edgewise. I have a question for you guys. You know what would be fascinating to me is if somehow we could ask Dak Prescott, hey, Dak, you're the GM of the Cowboys. You're on the clock. Do you want Patrick Surtain or do you want Kyle Pitts? I'd be fascinated to hear what Dak Prescott would think, because he is a selfless team guy that's all about winning. And I wonder, in his heart of hearts, what would Dak Prescott say to this conversation?
I would think that he would say defensive side of the ball. That's what I would think.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, I would agree too. And last word here, bottom line, that one of those 49-47 games came against the Falcons in that ridiculous onside kick game. And then, ironically or coincidentally, Dan Quinn is gone, and now he's back on the other sideline as the DC in Dallas. It's funny the way the league works. Straight Talk Wireless, no contract, no compromise. On the way, we're thinking about maybe 5 quarterbacks in the top 10. Just a handful of years ago, we had 5 in the first round.